Good evening. Welcome to South Asia Newsline. I'm Arjun Chaudhary. Here are the top stories we're tracking for you on Wednesday, the 29th of April. India spearheads massive rescue and relief work in quake-hit Nepal. Afghan forces ward off Taliban attack after 5-day face-off in northern Kunduz. And Sri Lankan Parliament passes landmark 19th constitutional amendment. And now for all the details. The Indian Army and Air Force have intensified its relief mission in quake-hit Nepal. Both forces have stepped up Operation Maitri in synergy with the NDRF to help in providing maximum aid.
Relying on the ties with Nepal which run deep, India lost no time in sending aircraft to Kathmandu carrying disaster response forces, medical teams, food, medicines and rescue equipments as soon as disaster struck on Saturday. India on Tuesday deployed 6 more teams of the National Disaster Response Force, taking the total number of NDRF teams in Nepal to 16, with 10 being rushed there immediately after the catastrophe. The Indian Army confirmed it had reached far-flung areas in the country, including Barpak, located around the epicenter of the earthquake. India is geographically, linguistically and culturally much closer to Nepal. Hence, it was the first nation to offer help to the Himalayan nation.
हमारे जवान जो हैं दिन रात मेहनत करके और इन शवों को और इन जिंदा लोगों को निकाल रहे हैं और प्रतिदिन नेपाल आर्मी की मदद से वो हमें बताते हैं कि कहाँ जाना है और उन स्थानों पर उन मोहल्लों पर हम जाते हैं और जहाँ स्ट्रक्चर्स कोलैप्स कर गए हैं उनमें हमारी टीम एनडीआरएफ की टीम जो है सर्च करती है और रेस्क्यू करके उन लोगों को निकालने का प्रयास कर रही है.
The NDRF personnel who were working almost round the clock in difficult conditions have so far saved several people and pulled out 73 bodies from the debris across Nepal. It had also successfully rescued a Nepalese woman alive after being trapped under the debris for 50 hours. It was an emotional moment for the family who were happy beyond words to find her alive.
We got the information that the lady is stuck between 2 slabs, but there is some cavity and she is alive. So we firstly stabilized that particular area, then we given some life-saving medicine to that particular lady. After stabilizing her, we just dragged her out.
As the Army and NDRF personnel continue to drill through the debris to locate survivors and bodies, the Indian Air Force is airlifting survivors to safer locations. It has so far airlifted more than 2,900 people. A total of 36 fixed-wing sorties have been undertaken by the C-17 Globemaster III, IL-76, C-130J Super Hercules and AN-32. The Air Force has also carried around 240 tons of relief material and heavy rescue equipment.
इसमें मलबा हटाने वाले जितने भी व्हीकल्स हैं, जेसीबी व्हीकल्स और इंजीनियरिंग टास्क फोर्स व्हीकल्स जितने भी हैं, कम्युनिकेशन व्हीकल्स वो सब जा रहे हैं और दिल्ली से करीब 55 टन पीने का पानी जा रहा है. एक और जगह से आर्मी का कंटिंजेंट जा रहा है अलॉन्ग विथ रिलीफ मटेरियल और डिजास्टर रिलीफ टीम्स को ले जाया जा रहा है.
India has also evacuated 170 people of 15 nations, including the United States, Britain, Russia and Germany. It has also sent its Gorkha soldiers to various parts of Nepal to ascertain the requirements in remote places.
And while the Indian mission is rushing against time to rescue people in Nepal, its health teams are no far behind in providing urgent medical aid to the survivors.
A special 16-member medical team of the Indian Navy comprising 6 doctors and 10 paramedics have been deployed to travel to Nepal. The Indian Medical Association along with Delhi-based government hospitals like the AIIMS and Safdarjung had already sent 10 teams of doctors immediately after the earthquake hit the Himalayan nation. India's Health Ministry has also rushed a 34-member team of doctors and technicians along with 15 tons of medical supplies to Nepal. 5 separate teams comprising of dermatologists and a team of psychiatrists and psychologists will be dispatched to give counseling to victims.
We were given this land yesterday and within 5-6 hours, in fact 6 to 7 hours, we have set up this whole hospital. We have contacted the army authorities here, the civil authorities here, medical college people here that we have our hospital is ready, our OT is ready for operation.
The disaster, which flattened most of the hospital buildings and infrastructure, has forced local doctors to treat the injured out in open. India helped in setting up medical camps in the quake-ravaged nation. 3 field hospitals, each consisting of 18 medical teams, are now operating in Kathmandu, Pokhara and surrounding areas. According to Indian doctors helping in providing relief to the injured, Nepal is on the verge of an epidemic outbreak with the risk of serious diseases including diarrhea and skin allergies looming high. Nepal on Tuesday thanked India for extending a blank check and for rushing in rescue and relief teams within hours of the calamity. Nepalese Prime Minister Sushil Koirala has predicted the death toll could reach 10,000.
We are very much thankful to the Government of India, especially Ministry of External Affairs. They have extended all kind of support and instructed all the bordering points just to facilitate this kind of relief matters should not be abruptive in any way.
The fact that the two countries share an open border and close ties enabled India to come forward to help its neighbour Nepal after it was hit by a 7.9 magnitude massive earthquake.
The Sri Lankan Parliament has adopted the 19th constitutional amendment that seeks to curb powers of the executive presidency, which was in force since 1978. The legislation that marked a turning point in the Lankan politics was adopted on Tuesday after 2/3 of the 225 parliamentarians voted in its favour. The amendment was proposed by President Maithripala Sirisena, who sought to restore democracy by empowering independent commissions and judiciary. The key features of the new law include reduction of President and Parliament's term from 6 to 5 years, reintroduction of 2-term limit for a person to hold presidency, and power of the President to dissolve Parliament only after 4.5 years, unlike the earlier case of 1 year. Afghan President Ashraf Ghani has called for a regional cooperation to fight the challenges of terrorism. He also invited Indian businessmen to invest in the country as he completed his maiden visit to New Delhi on Wednesday.
Afghan President Ashraf Ghani ended his first state visit to India with an appeal to Indian industrialists to make investments in his country. Addressing a business summit in capital New Delhi, he said Indian industry had huge potential to invest in Afghanistan's gas, fertilizers and chemical sector. He also called for an increase in rail and telecommunication facility between the two countries. Earlier in the day, President Ghani met his Indian counterpart Pranab Mukherjee and Prime Minister Narendra Modi at the Presidential Palace. He also thanked New Delhi for providing the nearly $2.2 billion aid and its continued support towards rebuilding the war-ravaged country. India is one of the leading contributors in reconstructing of Afghanistan after the nearly 3 decades of war. New Delhi, which is involved in a number of key infrastructure projects in Afghanistan, is also providing training to its military personnel.
Afghan authorities have claimed of successfully warding off the Taliban from many areas of Kunduz province. The northern region was a battlefield between the two sides for nearly a week, ever since the insurgents launched its spring-summer offensive.
Kunduz Provincial Governor Muhammad Omar Safi on Wednesday said that the Afghan forces have pushed back the Taliban from key areas of the region. The Afghan National Army had launched a simultaneous ground and air offensive after the Taliban fighters took control of the area since Saturday. According to the army, a number of Taliban insurgents, including women and some foreign nationals, have been killed. President Ashraf Ghani was on Monday forced to delay his state visit to India by several hours to meet top security officials following the Taliban offensive in Kunduz. The Taliban had last week announced of launching its annual spring-summer offensive against the government. The fight with the Taliban will be the biggest test of the Afghan army to fend the country all by itself ever since the NATO ended its combat mission in the country.
Maldivian President Abdullah Yameen has urged the armed forces to defend his government as he felt the sovereignty of his country was being undermined by international communities. President Yameen said on Tuesday that his administration does not need the permission of any global body in enforcing a court's verdict. His statement comes after various foreign observers, including Amnesty International, claimed of collusion by Maldivian authorities in the trial of former President Mohamed Nasheed, who was imprisoned on terror charges. Maldivian government is increasingly facing criticism from across the world for deteriorating human rights situation in the country. Police in Pakistan investigating the murder of Sabeen Mahmood has so far made little progress in the case. Many claim the human rights activists were shot dead by Pakistan's intelligence agencies for highlighting the issue of rights violations in the restive Balochistan province.
Even after 5 days of Sabeen Mahmood's murder, the investigators have made no progress whatsoever in the probe. This comes even as civil society and activists continue to protest, seeking proper investigation into the incident. But many believe the probe could be just an eyewash, as one of the country's most powerful establishment, the ISI itself, is under suspicion for Mahmood's murder.
We do know that the ISI and Sabeen Mahmood had a problem, that she had been harassed earlier, and then she had been warned not to conduct these affairs.
Mahmood was shot dead late on Friday by unidentified gunmen on motorbikes hours after she hosted a talk featuring prominent Baloch campaigner Mama Kadir Baloch. The talk, which was originally scheduled to take place in Lahore University earlier this month, was abruptly called off after pressure from the government. Following her murder, the Pakistan Army had in a rare statement condemned the killing and promised assistance in the probe. Fatah, however, said it was all a ploy, as the Pakistani establishment will not allow anyone to highlight the gross human rights violations by the army and intelligence agencies in Balochistan.
The military has been pretty clear that they will not allow Mama Kadir to leave the country, or for any person to interview him, or to allow him to speak on their platform.
Southwestern Balochistan, which sits on untold amounts of mineral resource, is also the least developed province of Pakistan, with standards of living being worse than some of the poorest countries in the world. Pakistan has virtually handed over the control of many of its strategically important locations to China, its all-weather ally.
That they've sold off that entire region to the Chinese government, that they have now a naval port where the Chinese Navy will be stationed, where they are selling off the gold and copper of that province, that civilian and military leaders have pocketed hundreds of millions of dollars in selling off that country to Chinese multinational companies and the Chinese state.
The province has for nearly 7 decades been the battleground for a separatist insurgency led by the Baloch people. Pakistani establishments have through the years resorted to mass abduction and murder of thousands of activists to crush the movement. Mahmood was the latest high-profile figure in the country to be targeted for highlighting the burning issue. Hamid Mir, one of the most recognizable faces on Pakistani television, was critically injured last year after he was shot by unidentified men. His family and later Mir himself blamed the ISI for the attack, which he said was a follow-up of interviewing Mama Kadir Baloch on his television show. Other prominent journalists, including Salim Shahzad, who was killed in 2011, and Raza Rumi, who survived an assassination attempt in 2014, were also targeted for their criticism of the atrocities of the Pakistan Army.
Well, that's the way it was in South Asia this evening. Before we conclude the top stories, once again, India spearheads massive rescue and relief work in quake-hit Nepal. Afghan forces ward off Taliban attack after 5-day face-off in northern Kunduz. And Sri Lankan Parliament passes landmark 19th constitutional amendment. Now our viewers can watch the show on SouthAsiaNewsline.com. You can also visit us on Facebook.com/SAsiaNewsline and follow us on Twitter at SAsiaNewsline. And that's all in tonight's edition. We'll see you same time tomorrow. Good night.